Next presenter this morning is Chris Cairns, Executive Chairman and Managing Director of Stavely Minerals. Chris has extensive exploration, discovery and mine development experience in Australia, the Philippines, Indonesia and China. He's the Chairman of the Australian Prospectors and Miners Hall of Fame, and under his leadership, Stavely has made one of the most exciting Australian copper discoveries in many years. So welcome, Chris. Look forward to the update.
Thank you, Digby, and thank you to the organisers. Great to be back. Last time I was here was in 2012 when we announced the merger between Integra Mining and Silver Lake Resources, so good to be back on the stage. As I was sitting there listening to other presenters, some great stories, I realised that I hadn't, in fact, updated our corporate slide to include Rob Dennis having joined the board, so I apologise to Rob, but we're at a very exciting time for us. We went into Western Victoria some 6 years ago, an IPO in 2014 with a porphyry focus. We drilled a lot of holes looking for a deeper porphyry, but in the end we recognized that the system was a little bit different to first envisaged, and in fact it was a magma-style lode copper, gold, silver type system, and in September 2019, we put in the first discovery hole of shallow mineralization, and I'll talk to you about that, but it was 32 metres at almost 6% copper and a gram gold from 62 metres depth. And we've been drilling that out for the past 2 years almost, and it's coming along very nicely. At the moment, we have to demob our just the last drill rig because it's very wet over there, as it has been in Perth. But we'll be back on the ground in October with 10 rigs to finish that drill out. But in the interim, we're looking at some regional exploration. We flew a Falcon gravity gradiometer survey recently, 7,500 line kilometres, and it's thrown up some really interesting opportunities for us. We're marrying that up with some regional geochem, roadside air core type drilling, and we're realising that there's a whole bunch of near-miss opportunities there that we'll be able to get onto in the new year when it dries out. So a very exciting time for us. We are moving similarly in parallel with a development proposition, so we've got a scoping study underway before we finish that resource drill out. But that really gives us an ability to just plug in the numbers once we complete the resource, and the scoping study will spit out fairly quickly thereafter. So, as I say, apologies to Rob Dennis. Rob came on board because he does have that very vast development experience. He's a mining engineer involved in with Lion Ore at Thunderbox, then Independence Group at Nova Bollinger, and just a very, very experienced operator and a great addition to the board. Currently, share price-wise, we're in the orphan period, if you like, where we've made the discovery. There's been a bit of exuberance, and people are just waiting for us to finish the resource drill out and then come out with the numbers in the scoping study. And the project really is turning out the way we envisaged it. A phase 1 open pit pays for all of the development. It's robust in its own right, but then you're likely to have a 20-year underground operation after that in a similar style to sort of the Cobar Basin type deposits, the base metal deposits. So in Western Victoria, we're a first mover, so really we've put our foot on all the ground we really wanted, so it's quite an extensive arc. Really good work by the Geological Survey of Victoria and Geoscience Australia in identifying the opportunity, and we were the ones to get in there and put our money on the ground and pick up the position. So a really dominant position. You can see in the magnetics there, the belt is running up the central portion. That's the Stavely belt. There's another belt called the Bunningle belt out here, and that's where our Tora West recent discovery is located. A bit complicated geometry-wise. These are additional belts that offer what they call a Mafeking mega-kink. They've been snapped off these two other belts and rotated in that position, and then the Dryden belt coming up here. Anyways, we have absolutely the best, the dominant position in this emerging copper province. These are our opportunities, and you can see our 10-year position, so I'm just not blowing air. It is really, we've got that tied up. It is really a big company type move, but we're, with the discovery, that's really just the beginning. So focusing initially on Thursday's Gosselin, the hatched area is the outline of the porphyry, and it had a chalcocite blanket sitting on top of it, which strangely was only on the northeastern and eastern side of the porphyry. We didn't really understand that until we realized, in fact, that the structurally controlled mineralization is on those margins, and the chalcocite blanket is actually not developed on the porphyry, it's developed on this high-grade structurally controlled mineralization. So we spent a lot of time in the early days looking at the porphyry potential, and we drilled a hole down to about 1,800 meters. We felt we had good reason because we intercepted these really beautiful looking quartz magnetite veins, or M veins in porphyry parlance, that looked very much like Cadia Ridgeway. So we chased them. It was a bit of a red herring, but in the doing so, we intercepted a number of high-grade structurally controlled intercepts, and one of our consultants, Scott Halley, suggested, well, look, you're only a junior company, you can't afford to drill these deep holes looking for the porphyry. Maybe you should look for the higher-grade structurally controlled stuff closer to surface. And that breakthrough, of course, came through with the first hole targeted on the what we call the ultramafic contact structure, 32 meters, 6% copper, a gram gold, and 2 ounces of silver, including 2 meters of 40% copper. And you can only get those sorts of grades where you have high tenor copper sulfides. And so in the pictures here, on the right-hand side, early pyrite is then fractured and infilled by bornite. And on the photo on the left, the purple bornite is obvious, but less obvious is the silver chalcocite, which as a mineral is 80% copper. And so that's where we get these fantastic grades from. It's quite an interesting system in terms of fluid chemistries, etc. I won't bore you with that, but the system just has this amazing metal carrying capacity. So the ultramafic is very magnetic. It's been serpentinized, a lot of magnetite in it, and it's on that contact that you can see in the black dotted line where the mineralization is hosted. And so we've been drilling this out on a 40 by 40 pattern, very much with a view to have a vast majority of the resources in high confidence indicated resources so that we can roll into this scoping study and not have ASIC complain about putting out production forecasts and financials. So very much in hand, we've drilled out roughly about 80% of it, with about 20% to go to the southeast, where we have a little bit of an access issue, but we're working through that. I'll just talk about that in a little while. So up the top there, a distal intercept. It's base metal, precious metal, typical of these sort of magmatic hydrothermal systems. Then further down to the south, we've drilled under a fence line and hit it at depth, about 350 meters. Still got 23 meters at percent copper and a bit of gold. So overall, we've got the system over about 1,500 meters so far, and still growing. Long section wise, the large magenta dots are the equivalent of more than 50 meters at 2% copper equivalent. So there's some really big grades and big widths in this thing. It's very consistent, and we've drilled under the fence, as I say, and you can see some dots on the far right-hand side there where it's continuing to grow and at depth, and it's plunging. So this is just the little paddock where we're just in the final negotiations for access. We expect that we'll have access after the winter rains. So we'll be able to finish this resource off with only 16 drill holes to be drilled, and then roll into the resource estimation and scoping study. So very much all mapped out, very, very systematic. But just to talk about some of the intercepts, we do have some very large intercepts. So in this instance, 87 meters at 1.75% copper, half a gram gold, and 20 grams silver. But very typically of almost all of the intercepts that we have in this system, there are discrete higher grade zones. And in this instance, we've got the 24 meters at 4.2% copper and 1.25 grams gold. And what is always a very consistent intercept is the basal intercept, in this case 9 meters at 4.1% copper and almost 2 grams gold. So the deposit is demonstrating that it is amenable to the bulk mining open pit type of operation, as well as that transition to a more selective underground mining proposition afterwards. Likewise, this intercept was a little bit fortuitous in that the chalcocite blanket was intercepted up the top of the hole. Then the main ore body lode with that 84 meters at 1.5% copper and quarter gram gold, which is very, very vanilla flavored sort of grades for this ore body. And then at the basal intercept, again, that 28 meters at over 3% copper and 0.5 gram gold. So really just belaboring that point, that this thing is amenable to both open pit and underground. And we also do see a late-stage gold overprint. So if you imagine in a hydrothermal system a cooler gold overprint on the system, and in this case, it's expressed as 2 meters at 132 grams gold, which is very sweet and very nice. So it's a really interesting system that's got some great grades in it, including gold. We see very little arsenic in the system, by the way, so the metallurgy is producing a very nice clean concentrates. But up the top here, the discovery hole, hole 50 on the right-hand side, we're getting intercepts underneath the little low-angle offset. We've mapped that out quite nicely. And then deeper intercepts at about 550 to 600 meters on what we call the copper lode splay, and even deeper on another structure called the north-south structure. So some really sweet grades in there. Over almost a kilometer vertically. So we're just, the program really is very simple. We'll complete that shallow resource drill out. Once we've got that, we'll start to pull that load down at depth. We'll start to pick up the additional loads that we see on other structures and bring them closer to surface and potentially get them contributing with shallow open pits and test some regional targets. And we think this whole thing is driven by porphyry. So really the way we see this thing playing out in terms of our scoping study is the phase 1 open pit, that pays for all the infrastructure, it makes good money in its own right, but then you've got a second phase underground. If it's a kilometer vertically, if you consider a development proposition at 50 or 60 meters vertically per year, you're talking about a multi-decade underground mine life. So it's really shaping up very much the way that we envisaged it would, and we're very pleased that it's demonstrating a robust potential development. So the plan, as I've sort of progressively been taking you through it, really is to complete that resource drill out, do the phase 1 scoping study, start to drill out the deeper mineralization at depth, and really test those regional and porphyry targets that we've got. And I think that those regional targets really is part of where the story is going. Recently we announced a discovery of a porphyry prospect under 30 meters of transported cover coming off the Grampians. Low-level air core results there, so they're anomalous, but we certainly expect when we get the diamond drills onto this to get better grades. In this case, it appears to be more of a copper moly system, and it does look like we're not really high up in the system, so we're just off to the side of the target potassic zone, so it's very exciting when we can get in there in the new year with a diamond drill and test this one. It very much looks like some of the pinking on the quartz veins that you see at North Parks, and the pre-discovery drill hole at North Parks was only 0.25% copper. So we're not suggesting that ours is a gold-rich system, so don't mistake me on that, but it's a really good, encouraging result. But we do have other anomalies that do have gold anomalism, and we, as I mentioned earlier, we consider old drill hits near what we have as new geophysical anomalies to be near misses, and in this case we've got 4 priority targets in that sense. Tour Road has 15 meters at 1.3 grams gold and 0.9% lead, sort of a distal type signature. Proximal to a geophysical anomaly. Yarram Gap, again, gold, close to a geophysical anomaly. So we've got a large number of these anomalies that have been produced from a recent gravity gradiometer survey. So that will be really part of the story as this province emerges. So normal future-facing commodity type attraction. Also, not very many good quality copper assets in first world jurisdictions, so we have both of those boxes ticked. And of course, some of the identities here this week have been raising special purpose acquisition companies to pick up on future-facing metals, and we say, bring it on. So we have that first mover position. We're drilling out a high-grade, structurally controlled deposit. It looks like a very, very good system. It's going to produce a phase 1 open pit, phase 2 underground, very robust. A lot of discovery potential at depth to find the porphyry that's driving the system, but regionally we've got more than 10 regional targets that have yet to be tested, and some of them undercover, and no geochem work ever done on them. So for Stavely, thank you very much. And just one last slide, which is if you would please come to the booth. We're also bringing the band back together into the goldfields with E79 Gold Mines. Ned Summerhays is CEO, ex-Silver Lake and Black Cat, and Deborah Lord is in her first outing as a non-executive director. So thank you very much for your attention.
Well done, Chris. Thank you. Thanks, mate. Thanks very much, Chris. That was great.